some of the things that we've certainly heard, obviously we've gotten a lot of great feedback about the conference in general and about the movement. There's, so much excitement. The big variable, and I just want to say, the big new variable in the equation, though, is certainly the students. And so I think we should give the students one more round of applause for their attendance, and actually again, the level of engagement has really, really blown me away from the students. And I think that it's going to require a lot more work on our part to make sure that we rise to the occasion as an association to cultivate the student population. And success is a beautiful thing. And I think we're on the cusp of a whole nother chapter or avenue within the FMMA. So, sir? No. The when is we normally do try to do these conferences, in the spring, like now, to the places, and this is not, I'm getting ready to say we're looking at two different places, but they are not, neither one of them is final, and it could be a wild card. It could be something completely different. But two areas that have been discussed would be back here in Oklahoma City, and then also Nashville are ones that are being considered, but others are still being considered. So don't hold us to either one of those.
I want to thank everyone for the conference, especially your talks. This whole conference has been awesome. It's been said a few times, we've come a long ways. Look where we are, but we're not there yet. And so with that word yet, that seemed to kind of be a recurring theme. Just wondering, kind of in both of your minds and hearts, where is the yet? Or where do you want us to be, or vision-wise see us next year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road?
Well, we're not quite double what we were last year, but it's pretty close on attendance. This is tough to put on. It's gone smoothly because there's been a lot of work behind the scenes by a lot of people to make this happen. And so to make it even bigger is more work. And I think that our challenge is to make sure we don't get out in front of the resources that we have in order to make it bigger. And I also like a rate of growth, and you may disagree with this, but I like a rate of growth that's manageable. If it gets too big, we run the risk, as Tony Dale and I discussed earlier, of it becoming a little less personal. A lot of what happens here that's wonderful happens out there in the hallways, not necessarily in here. As great as the presentations have been and as inspirational as they've been. So I would like to see it grow, but I would like to see it better more than I would like to see it bigger. To get, to a place where we're having this in enormous venues, then the sponsorships have to increase because it's expensive. And these huge conferences in Vegas and all these other places, so they can't do that unless some black hats, as Jay calls them, are sponsors with the big cartel kind of money. So I'm astonished that we're double what we were last year. I think growth-wise, where I would like to see us go is well over half of the attendees being students. That is incredibly disruptive. One of the most disruptive things I think that we've been involved with. So
we may have to invest in more security if we do that.
Some growth, but not crazy fast. It's got to be manageable. It's got to be right. We've got to make sure we're better as we go along, not just getting huge.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, the quickest way to turn up, and I'm not 100% sure that we're answering your question, so I want to maybe take another angle here a second. But yeah, I mean, the quickest way to turn up attendance and making the conference bigger and fancier and bigger venues and everything is just to take those pillars and throw them out the window. That's how you do it. Everybody in this room most likely also knows that the quickest, if you all were looking to be bigger and make more money and everything else, you know how to get there. If you'd be willing to sacrifice your soul and, all the things that you've rejected to be here, it's easy to go back. It's hard to be where we're at today. And it's hard to continue to go forward, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. So there is a balancing act between growth and not killing what we all feel when we're here. That's something that we're trying to nurture, and as we grow, we maintain that, and that's a difficult balance. I don't know if you had an ulterior question or intention with your question, but sometimes we do get asked, well, hey, what's the goal of the FMMA, not as an association, but as a movement? And I don't know that any of us have a finish line where we get to this point where we're there. I don't look at it that way at all. We don't know where this movement is going to go. And doing any sort of top-down guidance or anything like that, that's what we're all against. Free market is literally the free market, and the market will take this movement where it needs to go. The FMMA's purpose is simply to provide, again, healthy nudges in what we think is the right direction, and a lot of that comes from you all. And just to make sure that we also are providing the information to where we all compare notes, and the entities out there that are trying to derail what we're all trying to do, we want to make sure that we're able to identify those and call it out and not step on those little landmines that are always coming up. So I hope that answers your question.
I'm Jeff. I'm a DPC doc for any out there that don't know me. So obviously I'm biased towards primary care. But one of the themes that I kept hearing yesterday in a lot of the talks that I'm wondering if you guys can comment on is, especially with the employer type structures of, no costs, no copay, no deductible, no out of pocket to the employee. And one of my feelings is, well, what's the stake in the game for the employee, particularly from the primary care perspective, if they're not paying the membership fee to me, and they have no contribution directly to me. I forget who the economist was that talked about a primary, secondary, tertiary transaction, and how in the mainstream we have almost like a whatever it is transaction in the mainstream system. And I just feel like it almost devalues in a way. For years we've been worth nothing more than a $20 copay. Well, now we're saying in these types of plans that you're free. And I was just wondering if you guys can comment, and I know you can't rip the Band-Aid right off, but to me, an ideal world that I'd love to see is the employee pays the DPC fee and everything above it's covered.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, Dr. Gold. It's definitely a topic of conversation, and I'll just tell you, we've done a lot of work in doing exactly what you're bringing up, and that is getting our employers to subsidize the direct primary care membership, knowing full well that is not optimal. It's in fact, it's not where we want to be, right? But to get DPC into, at least I can speak about my clients, to get it into my employer's space and to start leveraging all the benefits of direct primary care, we kind of have to prime the pump. We've got to, because the employees and the employers are already paying for ACA mandated coverage, which includes primary care. And so to then, throw a membership fee on top of what's coming out of somebody's paycheck to pay for DPC, it's a hard sell. So what we hope is over time that the DPC benefit and all the other free market benefits will either level out or cause the employer's costs to go down to the point where that can be, given in additional wages or whatever, but for the explicit purpose of, hey, beginning next year, we're not going to pay for direct primary care memberships. That's your responsibility. It's your relationship with your physician. And because the health plan's costs went down by 10% last year instead of up by 10%, you can now afford that. You now own your you own your primary care. And quite honestly, it's the same thing with Surgery Center of Oklahoma or anything else. If we could get to a point where the feds would allow us to start carving things out of the benefit plans to cause the costs to go down and incentivize people with more money in their pocket to, again, take on more responsibility. I think that's where we all ultimately want to be. And yes, I know I'm a TPA and I'm talking myself out of a career. But I think there'll always be room for us, but not down, you know what I'm saying? I mean, more of a catastrophic type of environment is where I'd like to see us in the future. And, so anyway, it's on our radar. We're definitely thinking about it just like you all are as well.
Jay, first of all, nice socks. Those are great.
Thank you.
You bet. Question for Dr. Smith, and Dr. Smith's too humble to mention this on his own, but it speaks to the FMMA and SEO and the intention and attitude, beliefs, and the spirit. So to the surgeons in the room and the medical students, OR number one is always a choice OR in every facility. And so when I toured SEO a while back, I said, hey, Dr. Smith, you've got room number 7. Explain that to me.
Well, that was a decision Steve Lonte and I made together. We had 6 ORs. I usually reserve this for the tour. We had 6 ORs, but we left room for 2 ORs under the roof to be built out later. So all the expense of building 8 ORs, except for the finishing touch on 2 ORs, was our plan from the beginning, and we still just have 6. But we have room for 8. And we decided not to have ORs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We decided to have ORs 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because we knew what we knew about some surgeons and what we knew, and they would all want to be in room number 1. So we don't have a room number 1.
If I may, I'll weave a question into this so I can stay within Jay's criteria of not standing up and making comments. But I wanted to offer at least an answer and at least a lining up with that thinking that yes, employees should have some skin in the game in their choices. Now, if you offer them a status quo type of plan, because as an advisor, I have to grapple with this. You come in with these new ideas and then you get pushback, and then you have to step back and you say, okay, if you want the same thing, you can have the same thing, you can pay the same thing, and you can get the same outcome, that's fine. That can be one option. But here's your other options. It's the path to, freedom and zero, all of that stuff. So even though they're making a choice, they do have some skin in the game by making that choice. So they are kind of like giving up this buffet, healthcare buffet. So they do have to make a choice to take a smarter road. But I presented 2 case studies at the DPC Alliance, Dr. Gold, last summer in their Minneapolis summit. And on the one side was a self-funded plan where we did incorporate the DPC membership into the financials of the plan. And that was one way to do it. And then on the other side was a teeny tiny group, is actually a church, only 4 paid pastors. And so we pulled them away from a United Healthcare plan that was killing them. And then we established an ICRA and a Sedera membership. And woven into the ICRA was enough money to pay the IUA on the Sedera membership, plus money for DPC and money for out-of-pocket expenses. And so I liked that option better. It's a cleaner, direct relationship between the buyer and the seller, the DPC doctor and the buyer, the employee. The employee still pays the DPC doctor directly, but then they turn around to me and ask to be reimbursed for their DPC fees. And as a tiny TPA, I am absolutely in no way in competition with anybody that does real TPA work. But I have enough knowledge to know I don't need to ask questions about that. My husband's TPA and his status quo employer, I have to go way beyond the pale to satisfy their criteria just to get reimbursed for my own DPC membership. So I'm at least making it a little easier, I think, by saying, yes, that is a valid reimbursement for your HRA. And it still fits the right dynamic between a direct relationship between the buyer and the seller.
Does anybody have we have time for one more question?
Hi, Ray Courtnoy. Have you guys, the actuarial people, I've never seen it proposed to insure a health plan for like 5 years. Why is everything 1 year? I think it's a horrible way to mitigate risk when you put people in a annual contract. Not only that, it's so disruptive. In primary care, patients are being forced to see new doctors every year when their plan changes. So these are a couple of, have you guys tried to get your head around a longer duration of actuarial risk as a product?
Yeah, it's probably more of a question for the reinsurance marketplace, but I can play an actuary. So I would say that, until you get into much larger groups with much larger spec retentions, you just have so much volatility. It's the sad answer, but you can have a plan that's doing everything right, doing great, and then just get absolutely blown out of the saddle where, the stop loss carrier's got a 700% loss ratio. And if that is going to span multiple years, they're going to want to try to mitigate that risk. And so because of that, I just don't see that we're, at least for now, unless something drastically changes with the volatility of catastrophic claims, you're not going to see it. Everybody wants it. Everybody talks about it. But if you've got if you see what we see and some of the other consultants in the room, you can understand why the reinsurers wouldn't be willing to do that.
Thank you guys very much. Greg Stefanik, family physician. You've done both. Keith, you've done a job preparing us for leadership. Jay, you've kind of mentioned how we need to do it right going forward. I'd heard this before. They ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then they fight you, and then you win, or they buy you, which is not a good option. But it seems to me we're in that stage where they're not ignoring us anymore, or they're not laughing at us, but we haven't full got the fight yet. We're probably gonna get the fight. The fight is still coming to us. So I think we're between that phase between they're laughing at us and fighting us. But I'm just curious your opinion as to where we're at, and I think there is going to be a significant fight going forward. So I'm curious your opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think we are better off thinking of ourselves as an alternative, and not revolutionaries that want to change the unfixable, but rebels just go in a different direction. And then the buyers will vote, and they'll continue to vote for the broken one, or they'll start to vote for the alternative, and then they're dead. But the what's wrong is the buyers have not put their foot down, and the self-funded market is the gorilla. And if they put their foot down, then our alternative thrives, the other side dies or changes. So the fight is, I think, that's a waste of time. They can have it. It's disgusting. It's unfixable. And I walked away, and many of you have too. We're an alternative, not. I have no interest in helping them change what they've set up. Like Jay said, I mean, it's working exactly as it was designed to work, and it's lining all the pockets it's supposed to line. And it's just a jiu-jitsu move. You just walk away from it, and that's the answer, I think, is to focus on ourselves and our alternative. And
I can't help but add one more thing, and I think it's just important to hear. As this movement is an insidious trap for the cartel, and because we get this question every year at Ask Us Anything, and what are we going to do if they start, doing what we're doing? What if they get? That's the whole reason we're here. So if hospitals start terminating all their employment contracts with physicians, and physicians get to take back control of their patients, and they have to become more efficient so they can provide better care at a lower price and provide more choice, I'm going to the house.
I'll add one thing. Years ago, I was in a public forum, really pissed off hospital administrator who was sitting like right back here, and he stood up and he said, "What are you going to do if I just match your prices across the board?" And I said, "Then that's going to be glorious, because then price equal, you and I are just competing on quality, and you die." So yeah.
That's fun. All right. Well, you all have a wonderful weekend, and thank you all so much for the support of your association.
Thank you.